So a really exciting announcement last night on Impact Wrestling on Access TV, and that is that former WWE commentator and mixed martial arts commentator, and in my opinion, the best play-by-play announcer for pro wrestling in the world right now, Mauro Ranallo, will be working the Impact Rebellion pay-per-view. Now, this to me is a really, really big announcement. This is a really, really big deal, in my opinion, and it's a really exciting announcement made by Impact Wrestling. Now, Mauro Ranallo will be working the Impact Rebellion pay-per-view. It's reportedly a one-off, but at least just for now. Now, Impact Wrestling announced on Thursday that the former WWE and MMA announcer will join the Rebellion commentary team on April 25th to call the title versus title main event between Impact World Champion Rich Swann and the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega. Now, in an update on this, PW Insider has reported that Mauro is only coming in to Impact for this pay-per-view, at least as of Thursday evening. However, the door could be open for more work down the line. Now, the gig came together over the last several weeks with the idea of Mauro adding more to the grandeur of this big, massive title versus title main event, which is absolutely spot on. I mean, Mauro Ranallo has legitimately called some of the biggest fights in combat sports, whether it's Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor, or whether it's in the world of WWE and NXT as well. He's called some big, big fights, and I think he does the boxing. Is it for Showtime? He's a big deal. He's a big deal, and getting him in for this event is huge for Impact. It's absolutely massive, as I mentioned, in my opinion. And I know he's not for everyone, and I get that. There are a lot of people that view Mauro Ranallo as maybe too over the top, or they view him as too much with the pop culture references. And again, I get it. I get it. Some people that they just they're not. They're not. He's not for them. I can spit my words out eventually. He's not for them. Some people say that, and that's fine. You know, everyone has their different tastes. Everyone has their own opinions. For me, he's just that passion that he has, that some people say is over the top. For me, that adds to it. That absolutely adds to it. And I did back-to-back watch-alongs for NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver last week, and I know Mauro's not been with NXT for a while now, but especially on those takeover shows, and this isn't a slight at Vic Joseph at all, because I do think he's pretty good, Vic Joseph, but on those takeover shows especially, you just used to feel Mauro Ranallo's just his passion when he was doing those events, and him doing the Mamma Mia and oh my gods and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it was over the top, and maybe it was distracting for some people, but I thought it really did add to it. I really did. I felt it added just a completely different dimension. It made those takeover events just feel exponentially bigger than they actually were at the time. And I think it's just a massive, massive coup, this, for Impact Wrestling. I think it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And look, it's a one-off, and it is just because the event and the match between Kenny Omega and Rich Swann is so historic, and calling historic matches is kind of what Mauro Ranallo does. But look, if this can lead to more stuff, then Impact Wrestling, they will be absolutely laughing, because in my opinion, and I think in quite a few people's opinion, they'd be getting the best play-by-play commentator in the world right now for professional wrestling. I think he's just that good. I really do think he's just that good. Now, there is more to this. Mauro was at the Impact Wrestling Studios on Wednesday night doing voiceover work for the 5 Ways to Win videos for Omega and Swann. You can see them on social media as well, and I would recommend doing it. If you're a fan of how the UFC or various boxing events or whatever, they do their promotion, especially the UFC. The UFC are really, really good at it. But the UFC, they do this, their promotional videos, their countdown shows. They're incredible. They are. If you're not even a fan of UFC, you can watch those UFC shows and watch the countdown videos they do on them, the behind the scenes stuff, the training videos they do that get you pumped up enough to watch the fight. And I thought that Impact Wrestling doing that with Mauro Ranallo actually added just, again, a different feel, and it's really smart. I think it's really smart by Impact and AEW, because even though this has all been on really Impact Wrestling's television as of late, they haven't really been hyping out on AEW television, so it's more been an Impact thing. They found different ways to make it a big deal and remind people that it's a big deal. When it was first announced that Kenny Omega was going to be facing off against Rich Swann, everyone went, that's crazy, it's monumental. You've got the AEW World Champion, you've got the Impact World Champion, champion versus champion, title versus title, someone's going to be leaving with all 3 bouts. That's a really big deal, and it doesn't happen that often. You know, rival promotions, they don't tend to work well with each other. They certainly don't give another wrestler their world championship in an opposite promotion. They just don't do that. That's a really big deal. It hasn't really, I mean, it's happened a handful of times, but in terms of really what I'm perceiving to be as a lengthy run with the World Championship. They haven't really done that before. So it's a big deal. And when that was announced, everyone reacted to that going, that's a massive deal. But obviously, time goes on, things happen, and other things happen in the world of wrestling, other events happen, and Impact, and I suppose to a lesser extent AEW, but Impact, because it's an Impact pay-per-view, they need to remind everyone consistently what a big deal this is. They need to remind everyone, look, this doesn't happen often. This is a really big match. You're going to see someone at the end of this pay-per-view hold the Impact and AEW World Championship. That's never happened before. It may never happen again. It's a massive deal. And I know obviously the announcement a couple of weeks ago was massive, and it caused, some people, I mean, myself, I saw it coming, but some people didn't. And certainly if you'd have asked someone last year, could you see this happening? They would have said absolutely not. It's a big deal, but they need to remind everyone, and also they need to pull it off. It's one thing to announce it, and there's one thing to do the match, but you can make it bigger. You can make it feel bigger, and obviously they are limited because of the pandemic. They can't run a big building. Who knows if they'd sell it out anyway, or at least sell tickets for it anyway. But what they can do, they can bring in a Mauro Ranallo. They can make it feel big. They can do a press conference like they did last night in Impact Wrestling. They can involve all of the executives from all of the other companies. They can get Mauro Ranallo to do these voiceovers, 5 ways to win. They can make it feel like it's a legitimate UFC, MMA, boxing, whatever combat sports you want. They can make it feel big. They can build up the anticipation doing it that way. So I think that's smart. I think that's really, really smart. And in addition to doing those 5 ways to win videos that he did for Kenny Omega and Rich Swann, which again, if you haven't seen them, check them out. They're really, really, really good. If you're into that kind of stuff, which I am, I thought it was fantastic. And just hearing Mauro Ranallo's voice again over it's fantastic. But that wasn't the only work he did. Ranallo also did voiceover work for the This Is Rebellion special that will air on Access TV next Tuesday night. Now, in a press release, Mauro Ranallo did have some comments about calling the epic and historic match. He said, quote, Swann versus Omega, champion versus champion, title versus title. This match represents everything I love about professional wrestling. I have been fortunate to call these 2 superstars matches in the past, and I'm very excited to be part of this historic encounter. Now, Mauro and Impact Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore go back a few decades after working together in Stampede Wrestling. It's possible that this is the connection between Mauro and Impact. This is what Scott D'Amore added in the press release, quote, this once-in-a-generation title versus title showdown deserves to be called by the once-in-a-generation play-by-play announcer. I've known Mauro for over 2 decades. There are very few people in the world who are as passionate or know their wrestling history as well as Mauro. This is a historic main event. The world champions of 2 major organizations putting everything on the line. I'm thrilled that April 25th at Rebellion, fans will have Mauro's legendary voice providing the soundtrack to history. Now, of course, this is going to be Mauro Ranallo's first pro wrestling work since leaving WWE in August of last year. He has continued to work for Showtime Boxing, as I mentioned, and worked the Mike Tyson pay-per-view last year as well. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting about this. As I mentioned, if I'm Impact Wrestling, and Mauro Ranallo's interested, and that's the key element here, because of course Impact Wrestling are interested. If they're not interested, you'd have to question and go, why are you not interested? I mean, this is, again, in my opinion, and I know I've said it a couple of times in this video, but you would have to say this he is up. If he's not the best in the world, he is well up there. He really is well up there. So if I'm Impact Wrestling, I'm asking him his price, really. I'm saying, look, what do you want and how can we make this thing happen? Because no disrespect to D'Lo Brown and Matt Striker, I think they've been very good. And again, not wanting to do a slight to Josh Matthews or anything like that. I think that was an upgrade from the commentary team they had. I mean, I've spoken about it here on the channel about that I didn't think that Madison Rayne was the best commentator. I think she did the best that she could, but maybe it wasn't the best position for her in the company. Josh Matthews, I mean, I mentioned that Mauro Ranallo, some people don't like him and find him slightly polarizing in terms of his commentary style. Josh Matthews certainly was polarizing. And for me, look, I didn't mind Josh Matthews. I don't know if that's just because when I was sort of younger, he was on commentary. I don't know. But I mean, I can understand why people didn't like him. And I do feel that over the course of several years in Impact, his style just became very, very... grating. Maybe that's fair, and because obviously Josh Matthews, he was a heel in Impact Wrestling as a character, but I think he's a heel in real life as well. By all accounts, that's how he is. So I can understand why people didn't like that. So certainly the recent upgrade they did to the commentary team of D'Lo Brown and Matt Striker has been an upgrade, and I do think they do a good job, and I think Matt Striker does a good job as a play-by-play man. But ultimately, Matt Striker's strengths, in my opinion, are as a color commentator, an analyst, whatever you want to call it nowadays. I think that's where he shines. Now, I know he can do both, and I know he's done play-by-play for Lucha Underground and done it for AAA in Mexico and all that kind of stuff. So he does have experience of it, but for me, his best work as a commentator is as a color guy, because he paints a picture. Mauro Ranallo is, the best play-by-play man in the business. And if they can get Mauro Ranallo to stay, usually I'm not one for the three-person booth, but a three-person booth of Mauro Ranallo, D'Lo Brown, and Matt Striker, it's up there. It's absolutely up there with one of the best commentary teams out there right now, and it's going to be fascinating to see how they all mesh together at Impact Rebellion. Now, again, Ranallo's just calling the main event as of now. I don't think he's going to be calling the whole show or anything like that, but it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal for Impact, and I cast my mind back to when we were talking about the announced teams last year. I believe it was whenever the announcement was made that Madison Rayne was leaving and there was going to be a new announced team and all that kind of stuff. And there were a few comments at the time, and credit to you guys that speculated on it and pointed it out and said that Mauro Ranallo should go to Impact. And at the time, I just said, you know what, I just can't see it. Not because Impact's a step down from WWE, which, ultimately, in terms of the exposure, it is. But I just felt that if Mauro Ranallo was going to do pro wrestling, he would do it in WWE. And he didn't leave WWE NXT because he was unhappy there or anything like that. I think he just left because he mentioned in an interview that he did, it was more about sort of the pandemic side of things, and he had sort of great anxiety of initially he was traveling to the tapings, but then they were doing them remotely, and even then he would have massive anxiety, and he found it difficult to work, and he just needed to step away. Maybe this is the right thing, because we know that Impact, we know their taping schedule, we know they're not live every single week. If Ranallo feels more comfortable coming in for a couple of days, doing some TV tapings or whatever, and getting out, or who knows, he can just do it after the fact. That's the thing as well. As far as I'm aware, unless it's a live pay-per-view like Rebellion, I don't even think that Matt Striker and D'Lo Brown are ringside calling it live to tape. I'm pretty sure they dub it after the fact over the top. I might be wrong with that one, but I think the action obviously is done live to tape, but I don't think the commentary is. I think that's dubbed over either in a studio or wherever. They said that Mauro Ranallo was in Impact Studios dubbing over there, so that might be the case. And look, if Mauro Ranallo, I think ultimately when it comes down to will he come back, will he do more after Rebellion, it comes down to a couple of factors ultimately, doesn't it? One being how Rebellion goes. If Rebellion's a big success, if it gets rave reviews, that will force Impact Wrestling's hand, because maybe they'll then say tomorrow, look, can we work something out? What do you want to do? Do you want to work but just pay-per-views? Do you want to work special events? Do you want to work just Impact Plus events? What do you want to do? We'll try and facilitate it. That's one thing. Another thing will be obviously how Mauro Ranallo feels. If he feels that he's capable of adding that workload, if he feels happy and comfortable doing what he's doing, you have to remember as well that there's no way in Impact Wrestling he's going to be produced to the level that he was in WWE. And by produced, I mean the people in his ear, obviously. Like when he was on SmackDown, he would have had Vince McMahon in his ear. When he was in NXT, he would have had Triple H in his ear. Obviously, they're completely different people to how they produce people. And I would assume in Impact, they'll have someone in his ear, but he can just do what he wants. I mean, that's the positive thing of going to a smaller company and performing on a smaller stage, is that if you're a bigger name, you can kind of do what you want. So I'm really excited for it. I think it's a massive win for Impact Wrestling. I really, really do. And considering, as I mentioned, that this is arguably the biggest match that Impact Wrestling has produced in, it's the biggest match they've produced in a really long time, arguably in the history of their organization. That might be a stretch, but as I mentioned with Mauro Ranallo, when he did the NXT TakeOver shows, he made those shows feel bigger. He made those shows feel important. That's what he does for this match. Immediately gives credibility, instant credibility to that match. And if the match we were hoping was going to be good anyway, sometimes having a good commentary team on it, it's like having a good crowd. There isn't going to be a crowd there, but having a good commentator, it can move it from here up to here. And that might not seem a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, for the viewer at home, it can just make it feel extra special. So I'm super excited. I'm really happy to see Mauro Ranallo back in professional wrestling. I'm fortunate to have had a couple of interactions with the guy, and he's always been incredibly nice and supportive to myself. So I'm excited for it. I'm a big Mauro Ranallo fan and a big Impact fan, of course. So this is a win-win. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Mauro Ranallo being announced to call the Impact Rebellion main event between Impact World Champion Rich Swann and AEW World Champion Kenny Omega in the title versus title match? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.